This is Alabama football recruiting. My name is Trey Yanity, joined tonight as always by best-selling author, 18-year veteran, and recruiting expert Andrew J. Bone. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us again tonight. Want to know about your Halloween, but we got a lot to cover tonight. Another commitment for Alabama, some new offers as well, and a big weekend, of course, is LSU coming into town. Got some big visitors coming with them as well. But let's get it started tonight. How are you doing? How was your Halloween?
I was good. First Halloween with our son, so that was fun. Of course, he's not going around banging on doors trick or treating or anything like that, or having any monkeys attack him or anything like that. So we kept him we kept him pretty safe. So he had a good time. I think it was more of a party for the parents than it was for the infants. We had I think 5 or 6 infants over at our house on Halloween evening. It was kind of weird because we actually, it was like the first time we were at home for Halloween, and we have a really busy, like really active neighborhood in terms of trick or treaters. I mean, there's kids everywhere. Our front porch light was on, so we were like, all right, let's go get a bunch of candy, trick or treaters throughout the evening. I don't think we had one single kid knock on my door, and it's probably because we're never home. Our lights always turned off. I've lived in my house for 11 years, and everybody, I guess, just assumes that I'm not the house that gives out candy. But we finally did it this year, and now we just got a bunch of candy. So I don't know. I don't need all that candy sitting in my house because I'm gonna eat it all. But so if you're in my neighborhood and you're watching this show, come by next year.
Not a bad problem to have, though. There, it's good to hear it. I really enjoyed hearing about your costume. I think you guys went as Bones. Is that right?
Yeah, we all dressed up as had skeleton outfits on. So the Bones, it's pretty good. I mean, my wife and I actually did it last year, but now we had a new addition to the family, so had to get him in on the action. It looked pretty good.
Excellent. So we hope you guys had a happy Halloween as well. Get in the comments. Let us know what you dressed up as for Halloween and get your questions in as well. We're going to cover some questions here about recruiting, but we want to know your thoughts as well. We're going to get to some fan questions at the end of the show. Hit that like button for us, guys. It's easy as just clicking on one button. Helps this show get out in the algorithm so we can get more Alabama fans like you on it. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We've got so much content out right now, so we continue to get into the season. Great to hear about another excellent Halloween. The first one for your son there as well. That's a cool deal. And Alabama picking up another new recruit this week as well. Aaron Anderson committing on Friday. And you mentioned last week that this was somebody you thought could really commit here with the Crimson Tide pretty soon. Obviously, it happened pretty soon after our show there. Andrew, what's your thoughts on this commitment? And, what does this say about the wide receiver room that Alabama continues to recruit?
Yeah, I mean, they're just continuing to build on to what they did last year in the receiver class, and then this year, they already have a commitment from Kobe Prentice, who I believe is one of the top wide receivers in the country. We talked about him this summer. Kind of came out of nowhere, flipped his commitment from Maryland to Alabama, and everybody was wondering, is Alabama just stealing Maryland commitments these days? And I think they quickly realized once Kobe Prentice hit the field this fall that he was clearly one of the top wide receivers in the country, and I think he's going to probably end up in the Rivals 100 or at least close to it. Aaron Anderson, already a very highly rated prospect, 4-star wide receiver. This was a commitment that I was not surprised by at all, even if things would have gone well down at LSU this season. I still kind of think that Alabama would have had a chance to flip Aaron Anderson. Visited Tuscaloosa 3 times in June, returned for the Ole Miss game, and then after he decommitted from LSU, decided to come back for the Tennessee game. And he'll be back in Tuscaloosa this weekend as Alabama takes on the LSU Tigers. But obviously a big commitment. This is a very exciting, very explosive, big-time playmaking wide receiver. It's got a unique opportunity to come in and contribute right away. I mean, this is a guy that can return kicks, can return punts, and I know Alabama signed a few of those guys last year, but this is a very electric wide receiver. He's worked out in the past with the former Alabama Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith, so he knows what it takes to or at least has been told what it takes to be a great wide receiver at the University of Alabama. So this is just a great addition for the Tides class. And regardless of what happens at LSU, who they might bring in, I still feel very confident that he's going to stick, with his commitment to Alabama. Now LSU, they might come after him again, but I think with his commitment to Alabama, just the other day, the visits to Tuscaloosa. I mean, this is 5 or 6 visits to Alabama over the course of the last 6 months. So he's very comfortable and familiar with everything down in Tuscaloosa. This wasn't just a out of nowhere type of commitment, and I think Alabama got a good one here.
I think they did too, and they, like you said, continue to add into this receiving room, along with Kobe Prentice there. Another great recruit in Aaron Anderson. And Alabama extended another new offer this weekend as well. A familiar name for Alabama fans, Christian Miller, not the linebacker. This one, a defensive tackle in the Rivals 100 as well. What Alabama fans need to know about this new offer?
Well, it's a very intriguing offer because I honestly, I actually thought he already had an offer from Alabama, and just never really showed any interest in the Crimson Tide. But Alabama evaluated him this season, decided to go ahead and extend him an offer. Now, this is a big dude. He's 6'6", 280 pounds, out of Cedar Grove High School over in Georgia. He's actually going to be visiting Alabama this weekend. Told Adam Gorney of Rivals after the offer came through yesterday that this was a game-changing offer for him. Now, let's just kind of wait and see how things go. I wouldn't say Alabama's in the driver's seat to land him because I do believe that Georgia has been considered the team to beat for him over the course of the last few months, and I still think Georgia's the team to beat there. But getting him on campus this weekend for an unofficial visit, very big, because that means he can still come back for an official visit, maybe sometime in December. So got to build that relationship, and certainly make him feel like a top priority, because Alabama's they're still involved with several defensive linemen, still trying to get a few more on board in this recruiting class, and there's some that I feel like they've got a great chance to land, including Isaiah Hastings out of Clearwater, Florida, by way of Toronto, Canada. Curtis Perry, defensive lineman out of Pike Road or just outside of Montgomery, and also Anthony Lucas, who we'll talk about here in a second. It's going to be visiting this weekend. Those are some guys that I feel like Alabama has a great chance with. But this is a great player. This is a big dude. I know a lot of people are looking for Alabama to really make a big splash on the defensive front. They already have one big defensive line commitment in Jaheim Otis. Who else can they get? And this is certainly somebody that they're starting to go after a little bit more. And, we'll just have to wait and see. But right now, still leaning towards Georgia with him. But, hey, if, it makes it down to Tuscaloosa a couple times, there's always a chance that Ty can turn with him.
No doubt about it. And this was a guy that really did seem excited about his offer. Game changing, like you said there, and a really big weekend for Alabama as LSU comes into town. You mentioned some visitors, but a long list of them as the Tide will host this weekend. I want to talk about guys really specifically in the 2022 class here. Some official visitors, some unofficial visitors as well. Let's just kind of go down the list, get your thoughts on each of these guys. The first guy I want to talk about, a really hot name in the world of recruiting, Damani Jackson, originally committed with Southern California. Your thoughts here as he makes a visit to Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big visit for him because he's been committed to USC for a long time. Obviously, coaching change out there with Clay Helton getting fired, and he took an official visit to Michigan. Now he's going to be making that trip to Tuscaloosa. And, we've always heard that if anybody can flip him, it's going to be Alabama. So this is going to be a big weekend for him. He spent 3 days in Tuscaloosa back in June. Just getting comfortable with the coaching staff, familiar with the campus, and just being around the program, being around a lot of the players, and seeing them work out, and not just being there for the Alabama football camp, but just being around the players, seeing them competing 7-on-7, seeing them work out with the strength and conditioning coaches. I thought that was really big. Now he's coming back for an official visit. He's going to get that red carpet treatment or that crimson carpet treatment, however you want to say it. But, I think that Alabama can really make a strong impression on him. He says that he talks to Alabama, almost every single day. So there's certainly a lot of high interest in Alabama from Damani Jackson. I certainly think that Alabama, has a chance here. I'm not saying it's a good chance, but they're gonna have a chance to potentially flip him.
That's something I think is going to get a lot of Alabama fans excited. A really exciting prospect there in Damani Jackson. Guys, I need you to keep hitting that like button for me. Keep getting in the comment box. We've got some really good questions so far. Want to keep seeing those. We're going to get to those in just a minute here. But up next, got to talk about Earl Little Jr., cornerback out of Plantation, Florida. Guy we've talked about a lot on this show, Andrew. Your thoughts on him as he gets set to make another trip to Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big visit for him because he's been committed to USC for a long time. I know a lot of people are looking for Alabama to really make a big splash on the defensive front. They already have one big defensive line commitment in Jaheim Otis. He took an official visit to Michigan. Now he's coming back for an official visit to Tuscaloosa. And this is a big dude. He's 6'6", Yeah, I know Earl's probably really excited about getting back up to Tuscaloosa. I mean, Alabama's been his favorite school for a very long time, since the spring. And I also know that Earl watches this show a little bit, so shout out to Earl if he's watching it tonight. He says he watches it a good bit. So I do think that Alabama's got a great chance with him. I think they're comfortably in the driver's seat, and we'll see kind of what happens this weekend. But this is going to be another big visit for him, getting back to Tuscaloosa, getting back around the players and coaches, and just getting familiar with the campus once again.
Certainly, a guy that really does know Tuscaloosa pretty well. Going to be great to have him back in town. How about Marvin Jones Jr.? Your thoughts there?
Yeah, now this is Earl Little Jr.'s teammate, and certainly somebody that Alabama's been pushing hard for a very long time. We hadn't talked about him a ton just because he hasn't made a trip back to Tuscaloosa in quite a while. Wasn't able to make a trip back during the summer like Earl was able to. But make no mistake, Alabama and Marvin Jones Jr. have been in a ton of contact over the course of the last really the last 2 years, and I certainly think that Alabama is going to have a very realistic shot with him being recruited mainly kind of as a jack linebacker, an outside guy. He's listed as a defensive end. He's 6'4", almost 250 pounds. A lot of people think he's a defensive end, but I know Alabama likes him, mainly as kind of that edge rusher at that jack linebacker position. So he's a Florida State legacy. His father is Marvin Jones, obviously, and certainly there's a lot of pressure there to stay home. And Florida State's been a little bit better over the course of the last few weeks. Almost pulled an upset against Clemson this past. I don't know if you call that an upset
I
of
was
the
going to
way the Clemson season's been going, but I guess after their loss to Jacksonville State, they've played a little bit better since then. But we'll kind of see what happens this weekend. But this is obviously Alabama's big opportunity here to make a big, strong impression on him, because I don't think he'll make a trip back to Tuscaloosa before making that decision. Probably sometime in December. But as we always mention on the show, one thing that coaches were not able to do last year is make in-home visits. So Nick Saban's still going to be able to go in-home, sit down with Marvin Jones Jr. and his family, and tell them exactly why he's an important piece to this recruiting class, and see if they can get him on board.
They certainly will. And another guy they really want to have a part of this class, an offensive tackle out of Allen High School, Nato Umeozulu, really a program that's been built up there in Allen. And another recruit here on the offensive line Alabama would love to have. What are your thoughts on Umeozulu as he gets set to make another trip?
Yeah. This is a very intriguing prospect just because he doesn't really talk much to the media. He keeps things really tight-lipped. Visited Tuscaloosa during the summer, and what I know is Alabama really liked him. I mean, they think he's got great size, great strength. Can play on the interior on the offensive line. They're really kind of missing that big interior guy in this recruiting class. They've signed some great tackles over the course of the last 2 years. This year, another great class with Booker and Elijah Pritchett and Dane Shore. Still trying to find some meat in the middle, and I think that this is a guy that they really like a lot, and he's going to be making that official visit to Alabama this weekend. His brother Zeno got offered by Alabama today. He's a edge rusher in that 2024 recruiting class. I think Alabama trying to give a little bit more incentive for Nito to join the Crimson Tide if they can potentially get him and his brother in the next couple of years. So big visit for him this weekend. We'll see how things go, but yeah, definitely somebody to keep an eye on.
Certainly. So I love those names there, Nato and Zeno. That's a cool family. I love it. Getting set for that trip. Caden Curry getting set to make his trip to Tuscaloosa as well. Another player that really interests me here, and a strong side defensive end that it's 4-star at this point, but a guy that Alabama is really interested in. What are your thoughts on Curry?
Well, I think Alabama's going to have to knock it out of the park with him this weekend. This is a guy who's been Ohio State lean for a very long time, has been a top priority for the Buckeyes from Indiana, and has made several trips to Columbus. He did visit Alabama during June, so there's definitely some interest there. But this is going to be a big visit for him and his family, and kind of just see where things go. As of right now, I strongly lean towards him going to Ohio State, but I think Alabama, if anything, can certainly make a strong impression on any kid when they visit campus, and they're certainly going to be rolling out the crimson carpet for him as well, and trying to make a strong impression and see what they can do. But as of right now, Alabama's really just going to have to hit it out of the park with him.
And it's a great weekend to do so. LSU coming into town, a lot of attention on the city, and really exciting weekend for these recruits to come into town and a recruit that a lot of fans are really excited about. Kendrick Law making another trip. What are your thoughts there?
Well, Kendrick Law out of Captain Shreve High School in Shreveport, Louisiana, has been a top priority target for Alabama for a very long time. Camped in Tuscaloosa in June, and a lot of people weren't sure what position he was going to play because he plays running back, plays wide receiver. Just really a great overall athlete. So where was he going to play? Well, he came to Tuscaloosa during the summer, worked out at wide receiver. So he had one of the best showings of anybody all summer long at Alabama's camp, and certainly been a top priority for the Crimson Tide for a long time. Now, I do think that it was a tight battle between Alabama and LSU for him. I don't know if LSU is really that much of a factor. Now, obviously, he's going to wait and see kind of who's going to be that next head coach down in Tiger Country. But as of right now, I really think Alabama's got a great chance to land his commitment. Starting to hear that Texas has, really stepped up its recruiting efforts with him as well. But this is a guy that I could easily see in Alabama's recruiting class, and somebody that we've been watching very closely, really since the summer, as potentially another member of Alabama's class. Alabama certainly is trying to strike gold in the state of Louisiana with the coaching changes, and they got one with Aaron Anderson last week. We'll see what they can do with Kendrick Law here pretty soon.
Great time to take advantage of it if you're Alabama. We got one more official visitor we're going to talk about, move it over to the unofficials, and then we're going to take your questions. So, guys, keep on getting them in there. But the last official visitor, Elijah Brown, making another trip to town here. Your thoughts as he gets set for his Tuscaloosa trip this weekend?
Yeah, this is a tight end commitment for the Crimson Tide, so this is going to be an exciting visit for him and his family. It's been a solid commitment, for a very long time. Committed, back before the spring, and really has never wavered on that decision. Even though Alabama has, an outstanding tight end class. Recently picked up a commitment from Jaleel Skinner, Amari Neblack, who, you could just call him an athlete because he can line him up at wide receiver or tight end. But Elijah Brown, from what I've heard, this is one of these guys that's like one of the most complete tight ends in the country. 6'5", about 245 pounds, can run, can block. Definitely somebody that I think Alabama fans should be excited about. We don't talk enough about him just because he's a kid from Ohio that doesn't really talk much to the media, kind of keeps things pretty quiet. But I know that Alabama coaches are extremely excited about him and really high on him. I mean, they probably consider him one of the top 3 tight ends in the country. I know he's rated number 8 tight end in the country according to Rivals, but I think Alabama feels very strongly about him and his future in Tuscaloosa. And this is definitely a great commitment for Alabama, and somebody that Alabama coaches really haven't had to worry about in terms of flipping that commitment.
Which is, crazy to think about. Like you said, just the depth of this tight end room with the recruits now, really insane. Elijah Brown, a special part of that group. Let's move it on to some unofficial visitors. And as we do so, guys, hit that like button for me and check out the rest of the channel. We got so much great content out right now. We're going to have another show tonight following this one, breaking down the college football playoff, kind of taking some thoughts, getting your guys' thoughts on that as well. Exciting, really excited for that show coming up at the top of the hour to see where Alabama shakes out there. But let's finish it up with some unofficial visitors now. Got to start with Julian Armella, another offensive tackle out of this class of 2022. Coming unofficial this weekend. What are your thoughts on his visit?
Yeah, there's been some going back and forth whether it's an official or an unofficial, but we're hearing it's going to be an unofficial visit for Julian Armella, the 5-star offensive tackle from St. Thomas Aquinas. Did not visit Tuscaloosa during the summer. This is going to be his first visit to Alabama in almost 2 years. So getting him back on campus, obviously pretty big for the Crimson Tide. Yeah, it's still kind of interesting to see what's going to kind of shape out at this offensive line position, because you have 3 offensive line commitments right now. You have Nito, who we talked about earlier, coming in for the official visit this weekend. Keontae Goodwin visited a couple weeks ago. You had Devin Campbell, the 5-star out of Texas, who also visited Alabama. So they've got some options still out there on the offensive line position. So Armella's planning on coming in for this weekend. likely going to come back for an official a little bit later down the road. But Alabama and LSU, two of his top, 3 or 4 schools right now.
Certainly so. Walter Nolan up next on the list, a guy out of Powell, Tennessee. Shown a lot of interest towards that home state school, but another monster prospect here, really at the top of the ranks in most categories. He's making a trip to Tuscaloosa this weekend. What are your thoughts on Nolan?
This has been a roller coaster recruitment that we've followed with Walter Nolan throughout the whole process. He plans on coming into Tuscaloosa this weekend on an unofficial visit. He has not taken an official visit to Alabama just yet. You know, I just don't see him in this class. I know Alabama fans don't want to hear that. They probably Alabama fans who follow recruiting closely probably know that that's probably not the case. I would be surprised if he even came back for an official. I think that it's a Tennessee, Texas A&M recruiting battle right now with the Aggies leading for his recruitment, and I don't see anything really changing with him. I know that Alabama fans hate hearing that, but I just don't see him as a part of this class. But he is planning on coming into Tuscaloosa this weekend, seeing the game, seeing the atmosphere, and hey, maybe things change after this weekend, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see about that.
Yeah, you never know, but this is one, like you said, that maybe will not commit with the Crimson Tide. But let's move it along. Shouts Preston making an unofficial visit here as well. A wide receiver out of St. James High School. Your thoughts on Preston as he gets set for his trip?
Yeah, this is another very exciting wide receiver that Alabama is heavily involved in, has been recruiting for a very long time. Camped at Alabama in June and also returned for the Champions Cookout in July. He's been trying to get out to some places this season, but after the hurricane hit back in, I guess that was late August, kind of took a backseat to recruiting. Didn't really go out and visit anywhere, but he's going to be making an unofficial visit to Alabama this weekend, and then we'll take an official visit a little bit later down the road. I think he's probably also still kind of waiting to see, who's going to be that next head coach at LSU, because LSU's really been kind of considered the favorite with him, from the get-go. But with the struggles that they've had, some other schools have kind of really moved up on his list. Alabama, Texas, Georgia, all these schools are still heavily recruiting him. So I think with him, knock it out of the park on the unofficial visit, kind of wait and see, a little bit down the road where he decides to take these remaining official visits. And, I still think Alabama's going to have a really good shot with him.
Certainly so. And thank you guys for sticking around here in the comments with us. We're going to get to those questions in just a minute. A couple more recruits to talk about, though. A couple more unofficial visitors. Anthony Lucas making the long trip from Scottsdale, Arizona this weekend on an unofficial visit. Your thoughts here on Lucas?
This is probably one of the most important unofficial visitors that's going to be on campus this weekend, because, as we keep saying, Alabama needs more defensive linemen, and this is one of Alabama's premier targets at the defensive end position. He took an official visit to Alabama back in June with his family and was just completely blown away. We weren't really talking much about Lucas prior to that visit. We knew he was going to come in for a visit, but I really didn't think he was much of a not necessarily an Alabama target. We just didn't think that he was going to show much interest in Alabama, being all the way from Scottsdale, Arizona. But as we know, Alabama can recruit anywhere in the country, and this has certainly been a guy that they've been, keying in on for a very long time, ever since that visit. And they really like him a lot. I think Alabama is certainly one of the top 2 or 3 schools on his list, along with Texas A&M and Notre Dame. But I think they could potentially move ahead in his recruitment this weekend. He's going to be making that trip back. He had always planned on making the trip back for this game. I think he probably expected it to be a little bit more of a, maybe a top 10 matchup between the 2 schools. But this is going to be certainly a great atmosphere. 6 p.m. kickoff. LSU. I mean, it's still a recent rivalry game. There's still going to be a lot of excitement in the air, and I think he's going to have a great time. LSU also still a school that he has shown some interest in, and LSU at one point was might have been considered the favorite. They've kind of died down a little bit there since the coaching change, but since Ed Orgeron is not going to be retained as the head coach after this season. So they're really looking at Alabama, Notre Dame, Texas A&M with Anthony Lucas moving forward.
And that's what's so interesting about this weekend. A lot of these guys have Alabama and LSU up on their list. The Orgeron decision, of course, changing a lot of that, but it's going to be really interesting to kind of follow the recruitment here with a lot of these guys, deciding between the 2 schools, or at least, having them up there on the list. Chill will coming back from Japan. We cannot thank you enough for the super chat again here, my man. Hope you had a great trip out there. Thanks for getting in the comment box. Always great to have you on the show. We
My
cannot
man.
appreciate you enough for the super chat. Those things, they help us keep going. So we appreciate it again, Chill Will. Thank you so much.
Thank
Let's
you.
finish it up with an in-state guy making an unofficial visit this weekend out of Montgomery, Curtis Perry, a guy we've had a chance to talk a lot about on this show, guy that I'm really excited to see. And, Alabama's excited to have back in town this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have some great defensive linemen on campus, and we talked about Christian Miller earlier. As another visitor that's going to be coming in after getting that offer. Yeah, I started to wonder, does this new offer, does that potentially put a little bit of pressure on some of these guys who've been holding out, waiting on making their decisions? And Curtis Perry is a guy that Alabama really likes a lot. They would like to get him on board. I think if they can get Curtis Perry, Isaiah Hastings on board here pretty soon, they're going to be pretty happy knowing that you still got some other guys that are out there, including Anthony Lucas and Christian Miller. But Curtis Perry is certainly a guy that has really moved up the recruiting board, over the course of this season. Didn't camp at Alabama during the summer. I think Alabama just wanted an opportunity to have an in-person evaluation on him. A lot of people just forget that we had that COVID year where nobody really was seen. Nobody got out. Nobody went in and did these in-person evaluations. So you finally got a chance to see a lot of these kids during the summer. Everybody comes in, works out, does either a full camp session or at least a private workout for the coaches. And Perry was one of these kids that didn't work out, that didn't participate in camp. And I think Alabama just wanted to see him a little bit this season. They saw him, they liked him. I mean, they loved his film, but once they saw him in person play on Friday night, they were in love with him. This is a guy that they really liked a lot, even though he's a little bit undersized. I don't think that matters at all, not to Alabama. And they've certainly been pressing hard for him. He's going to be coming in for another unofficial visit this weekend, and I don't know if he's going to make a decision anytime soon, but he's certainly somebody that could decide soon. And Alabama, Auburn, Texas are probably the three schools that I'm watching, very closely with him. There's some other schools involved, but I think it's going to be one of those three schools in the end.
How could you not love this guy? Watching the film here, absolute monster. I know Alabama would love to get him and like you said, add on to this defensive line class that, is hurting a little bit comparatively to the other position groups. But some great visitors coming into town this weekend. We're going to keep you guys updated there. So as always, you can go to BamaInsider.com to get those latest updates on these guys coming into town and all of the latest recruiting updates from Andrew Bone. Bone, got to know if there's going to be any commitments you see going down this weekend. A huge weekend, a lot of really big names coming into town. Does anybody make the commitment with Alabama?
Well, we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Nobody's currently scheduled to make a commitment, but I think with Earl Little Jr. coming back into Tuscaloosa, even though he says he's going to wait until the All-American game to announce a decision, I would not be surprised if he went ahead and made a commitment this week. I mean, this guy loves Alabama, and Alabama would certainly love to go ahead and get him on board. You never know with potentially a guy like Curtis Perry, Isaiah Hastings, who took an official visit a few weeks ago. I could see him making a decision here pretty soon, even though he's not coming in this weekend. Could still potentially see him committing, sometime in the near future. We'll just have to kind of wait and see what some of these other guys decide to do. But there's going to be a lot of excitement in the air this weekend, and a lot of top kids on campus. But you're also going to have all these Alabama commitments back in Tuscaloosa, trying to help recruit these guys. I mean, you got your regulars that are always in Tuscaloosa, like Ty Simpson and Jeremiah Alexander, and Traquan Fagans now, and Emmanuel Henderson. Now you got Tyler Booker and Jaleel Skinner, who, these guys are making their return this weekend to Tuscaloosa after visiting for the Tennessee game. So you got a lot of guys coming in that are going to be, trying to spend as much time as they can with a lot of these other recruits, trying to help them, or trying to at least get them to jump on board with Alabama.
It's going to be a full-on recruiting effort from the guys that have already committed and the coaches, of course, as well. And Chill Will, you guys, you're recruiting many followers and fans to the channel as well.
He's recruiting me.
Exactly. This is, you get in here to comments, you're asking to help grow the channel. Things like this, giving us super chats like that. That's what helps grow the channel. And we cannot appreciate that enough. Thank you for getting in the comments as well. And all you guys for getting these questions in here as we get to them now. Let's start with Barry and Brown. A couple different people asking about his status, kind of where he stands right now. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I probably won't get into to things too much with him, but Alabama really hasn't really been pushing that hard for him as much as they used to. I think there's some other wide receivers that they're really kind of focused in on right now. So I think Berrien's going to end up going to either Kentucky or Ole Miss. So, I just not too much comment on him right now. I just think that Alabama's kind of moving on with and focusing on other prospects.
Certainly so. And we will move along as well. Talk about some potential early enrollees for this 2022 class. Maybe who you expect to be a potential early enrollee, or maybe some guys that you've heard will be early enrollees.
Well, there'll certainly be a lot of guys that are going to enroll early. We'll try to put out a complete list, maybe next week on BamaInsider.com. But, Ty Simpson, you got Jaleel Skinner and Tyler Booker, Elijah Pritchett, a lot of guys that are planning on enrolling early. Jeremiah Alexander, Traquan Fagans. I'm trying to think who else off the top of my head. Those are some of the big ones. I think Aaron Anderson planning on enrolling early. Kobe Prentice plans on enrolling early. I know Emmanuel Henderson is not enrolling early because he's going to be focusing on basketball this season. Dane Shore, I do not believe, is enrolling early, but several guys are certainly planning on getting there in January and starting their career.
Be fun to keep track of there. And you guys can go to BamaInsider.com to keep track of that list and check out these guys. Who's going to be the early enrollees as we get closer there. But let's move it along to Jaheim Otis now. Will he potentially flip away from Alabama? Some worry there in the comments section.
Yeah, I think when Alabama fans probably saw Alabama extend a new offer this week on the defensive front, it probably made people a little bit scared that Jaheim Otis was looking elsewhere. But you always got to worry about kids in Mississippi. For some reason, they just don't like to leave home. They just stick with Mississippi State or go to Ole Miss. It's just hard to pull those guys. But Jaheim's been committed to Alabama for a while, has been pretty solid, has really not given any indication that he is going to flip. Now, he has taken some visits over to Mississippi State, and they're certainly pressing hard for him. But he says that he's solid with his commitment to Alabama. And, I don't think Alabama feels like he's going to flip. Now, he's somebody that we're going to have to watch all the way until he signs that letter of intent? Absolutely. You got to do that with pretty much everybody up until signing day. But with Jaheim Otis, he's certainly going to be one everybody's going to be watching pretty closely. But I think in the end, he sticks with Alabama.
I do as well. Like you said, tough to get those Mississippi guys at times, but he really has been a great commitment for this program. Let's close it out tonight, Bone, talking about a few more guys. I'll combine some questions here. Want your thoughts on Evan Stewart, Shamar James, and we'll close it out with Denver Harris as well.
Yeah, I actually spoke to Denver Harris's mom this morning. They're not going to be in Tuscaloosa this weekend, but they are planning on visiting for the Arkansas game here in a couple of weeks. So getting Denver Harris back on campus is going to be big for Alabama. I think they've got a great chance to land him and still lean towards Alabama, even though schools like LSU and Texas are still really pushing hard for him. I still lean, I don't know if I would say heavily, but I lean towards Alabama with Denver Harris right now. Shamar James, big visit for him this weekend over at Georgia. He's going to take an official visit with the Bulldogs. This is a second trip to Athens this season and the last 3 or 4 weeks. I think Georgia's got a really good chance to potentially sway him away. Now, he did visit Alabama last weekend, after that decommitment from Florida. So it's a 2-team battle. It's Alabama, Georgia. He plans on making a trip back to Tuscaloosa this season, and then go through the whole in-home visits and all that kind of stuff here in December. But it's definitely a tight battle, but certainly one that Alabama hopes it can win in the end.
It's going to be fun to watch. Bone, your final thoughts tonight as we close it out.
Yeah, well, you also mentioned Evan Stewart. Nothing new with Evan Stewart. I mean, I'm really kind of leaning towards him staying in the state of Texas. Not really seeing anything change with him. There was some talk that he was going to visit Alabama this weekend, but not going to visit. Could potentially, visit later on, but I just don't see, him in this recruiting class right now. So the receivers I'm really focused in on for Alabama, with Kobe Prentice, with Aaron Anderson on board, really kind of focus on Kendrick Law, Shaz Preston, and remember Alabama does have a commitment from Amari Niblack, who can play wide receiver, tight end, and Jaleel Skinner, who's also a big time pass catcher at that tight end position. Final thoughts. Obviously, big weekend ahead for the Crimson Tide. Really exciting time just because there's so many top kids coming in. It's Alabama, LSU. What more can you ask for? I do want to give a shout out to the family that lost someone in the Henry Ruggs accident. I know that's a certainly a tough situation. People don't drink and drive. Just don't do that. I mean, I know we probably all made that mistake in the past, but there's certainly avenues that you can go down that you don't have to do that. Hate it for Henry because he's certainly a great kid. I just breaks my heart seeing that happen. Hate it for the families that are all involved, and certainly hope that something good can come out of it. And also a shout out to Grant Hill's family. Grant Hill passed away, former Alabama offensive lineman. I remember seeing him at the Rivals. It was actually the first Rivals 5-Star Challenge in Atlanta. He was there with guys like O.J. Howard, Jalen Ramsey, Reuben Foster, and man, he was so talented, so good. He was this kid that was about 400 pounds when he was a sophomore in high school, and then dropped all this weight. Became just really athletic. I was almost down to about 300 pounds, and was one of the most dominant offensive linemen that we saw at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge that year. So, I certainly think that I was really just hurt to see that happen with him passing away. So shout out to Grant Hill's family, rest in peace, and also to the families that were involved in the Henry Ruggs accident, and also shout out to the family that was involved in the monkey attack out in Texas. So some crazy stories over the course of the last 24 hours, but certainly for kids that you cover, that you follow throughout their whole, careers from, the start, once they get that Alabama offer all the way to their pro career and see what happens, it's just, it's tough. It was a gut punch today. So hopefully, something good will come out of it.
Yeah, it's well put. That is, and condolences to all of the families involved with those tragedies there. But Bone, thank you so much as always, and guys, thank you so much for being a part of the show tonight. Chill Will coming in to close it out with the super chat. We cannot thank you enough, man, for all that you're doing for the channel, for you guys as well. Hitting that like button for us, subscribing to the channel, and as always, guys, go to BamaInsider.com. Check out all of Andrew Bone's work, Tony Tsoukalis' work, and everything you need to know about the Alabama Crimson Tide. Don't go anywhere, guys. We're going to be coming back in just a little bit to cover the college football playoff selection show, see who the top 4 is, and break all of that down. But until next week, my name is Trey Yanity for Andrew Bone. This has been Alabama football recruiting on BamaInsider.com.